Coming up on Lilly Ghalichi's Lilly Lashes lawsuit exposed. Is there any other juicy dirt or tea, if you will, in the complaint?
Yeah, he says that she didn't have enough capital. He's kind of throwing shade at her, saying she's broke. And she was habitually under the influence of substances including Xanax and marijuana. The judge who's assigned to this case is Judge Lisa Hart Cole, and I've been before her multiple times. She's a good judge.
Do you think that she's going to rule in favor of Miss Ghalichi? Oh, hey, pretty girl, I didn't see you there. Welcome to Mango Tea.
All right. Let's get to it. Hurry up.
Mango Tea. Made in China, bitch. Hey girl, and welcome to Mango Tea. If you're new here, my name is Steven Mango. I'm a drama channel. I expose YouTubers. We talk about the beauty community and beauty drama. So if you want to stay up to date on all things YouTube drama, go down below and click that subscribe button as well as the little bell icon. That's going to notify you when I make a new video, so you stay up to date on all the latest happenings on YouTube. Today, I have my husband Jeff with me. He's an attorney, as you guys know, and we're going to be discussing the $10 million lawsuit that was filed against Lilly Ghalichi and her eyelash company Lilly Lashes. Girl, there is so much drama, so we have Jeff here today to answer all of our questions to understand a little bit more what's going on with this lawsuit. So Jeff, can you explain in general terms what this lawsuit actually is about?
It describes there's 11 claims made against Ms. Ghalichi, and there's some specific allegations against her. Essentially, I'm boiling it all down, a man named Payam Pedram says that he made a deal with her, that he would run her business. I'm shorthanding it, but that she needed help running her business, and that instead of being paid a salary, that he would get partial ownership of the business. And then he alleges that she did things in order to deprive him of his ownership, and he claims she committed fraud in doing so. There's a lot of small components to it, but that's it in a nutshell, really. And then I can go on to discuss each of the items that she's being sued for.
So Lilly offered 50% ownership to Mr. Pedram in order for him to be able to give his business expertise in order to run Lilly Lashes. But from my understanding, what it looks like in the claim, it looks like that Lilly didn't want to give up such a large piece of ownership in her company because it started to take off, ultimately doing about $15 million in sales of these false eyelashes. So do you think that Lilly was trying to cut him out of the deal? And what in the claim does it say that Lilly was trying to do, which was, like you were trying to say, deprive him of the 50% ownership in Lilly Lashes?
Well, in any fraud claim, you need to meet several elements. One, there has to be a representation. Two, the representation has to be false. Three, and very important, the person who's suing has to have relied on the representation. And fourth, there needs to be damage. We only have part of paragraph 17 of the lawsuit, but it in essence says that Ms. Ghalichi offered the plaintiff 50% of her company in exchange for him using his business skills and acumen to grow Lilly Lashes sales. And she accepted that offer, and then in reliance, in the belief that she was going to make good on her promise, he worked on her company for Lilly Lashes and didn't do other things that could have made him money. And he also says that she sent him texts asking if he was ready to take over everything, and there's also an allegation that she moved her business to his premises and agreed to pay rent for the sublease of office space, and she didn't pay. So that's another aspect of it. That's the basic fraud claim.
So from what it sounds like in the claim and what you're saying, he actually devoted his time away from his own business interests and devoted that to Lilly Lashes because, like you said, she's moving in her offices to a space and stuff like that. But it doesn't look like they had an actual written contract. Now, how does it actually go if she's offering 50% of her company to this gentleman, but they don't actually have it in paper? Was it not smart for him to actually have a contract for that? Are her text messages to him agreeing for the 50% ownership enough to hold up that type of a deal? What do you say in terms of that?
Well, people mistakenly believe that you always have to have a contract in writing. That's really not true. You need a contract in writing under certain specified situations. One is for the sale of a piece of land or real property. Another would be for the sale of goods if you're a purchaser of over $500. Oral contracts are enforceable depending on the believability of the witnesses and what the judge thinks after all the evidence is in. Now, interestingly, what a lot of people also don't understand is that a judge is just a lawyer that knew the governor. And so judges are imperfect and they're human and they're affected by, and they try not to be, but they're affected by their own background, experience, things like that. The judge who's assigned to this case is Judge Lisa Hart Cole, and I've been before her multiple times. She's a good judge. She knows her stuff, she's no nonsense, and she'll handle the case, I'm sure, appropriately. So you don't have a wacky judge in charge of the case where anything goes or anything could go.
Given that Judge Cole is going to be presiding over this case, I know you said you've been before her before and that she's a good judge. Do you think that she's going to rule in favor of Ms. Ghalichi? Do you think, given the information that we have, how do you think she would rule on this type of a case?
There's no way to answer that. The only information we have are these 7 thin pages of a complaint. All we're hearing is part of one person's version of the facts. We have no idea what Ms. Ghalichi is going to say. Her response and the factual dispute she could make over this and the allegations are limitless. So there's simply no way to tell. In fact, if I could predict how a judge or a jury was going to rule on a case, I'd quit my job and I'd just open a storefront in Beverly Hills which says, I predict how your case is going to come out, and I'd be a very rich man. There's no way to predict it. And even the best judges sometimes get it wrong.
So why would you say that Lilly would offer an equity stake in her business for 50% versus just paying him straight for business consulting services?
Well, the reason that he says, we don't know why or maybe she'll say she did pay him cash. And here's the canceled checks showing that I paid him a salary as opposed to gave him away 50% of my business, right? We're only getting one side. He says that she didn't have enough capital. He's kind of throwing shade at her, saying she's broke. This is how I read it between the lines, just my interpretation. And he keeps calling her business inconsequential, throwing a little bit more shade, that he turned it from an inconsequential business into this empire. But again, that's what he says, and we don't know what she's going to say.
Do you think, in your opinion, because I feel like for me, if I had a small business, I may not know that it's going to one day go and do $15, $20 million in sale. And yes, of course, when you're getting a business consultant or someone that you're collaboratively working for or with, you want them to bring your company to that level. Do you feel like, and kind of in my opinion, I feel like she didn't actually think it was going to be this multi-million-dollar empire, and not that you should cut anyone short who you're doing business with, but do you think that she felt like, oh wow, this is actually giving 50% of $15 million away. I don't want to give them that much equity in my business, so maybe I can kind of try to get around this by saying, oh, well, I didn't have a paper contract or his text messaging, he misinterpreted it, just because she might not have wanted to give that equity stake that much in her business. And you also feel like she could or should have maybe just bought him out at that point instead of going down the route that they went down, which is going through litigation for arguing who has the right to that other 50% stake of Lilly Lashes.
Well, you essentially describe something called buyer's remorse. You know, I buy the diamond ring, I pay the money for it, I get it home, then I decide I don't want it anymore.
Right.
The problem is that when you make a contract, you are making a promise. And if the other person gives something in exchange for that promise, it's called consideration, he will argue whether she anticipated it going to be this huge empire is irrelevant.
Right.
And it is irrelevant.
Because he gave his business services.
He gave up doing other profitable things with his time and energy. Instead, he invested his time and energy, sweat equity, if you will, into her business. She can't now have the buyer's remorse to back out of the deal and try to renegotiate it. Now, again, this is from his perspective. We don't know what she's going to say. In terms of trying to resolve it before litigation, most lawyers will tell you it's much better to settle the case than go to a trial where anything can happen. There's an old joke, it's kind of disrespectful of jurors. Do you really want your fate in the hands of 12 people who weren't smart enough to get out of jury duty?
So given that he may actually have an oral contract with her or via text message, like we discussed, you don't necessarily need that written contract in paper, would a judge say, okay, here you are, you're entitled to 50% of her business? Would they say no, the $10 or $15 million is basically his buyout of the company? Because he would obviously say, I grew this business to this size, so any other future opportunities is because of the work I did as Lilly Lashes' business consultant, if you will. Would he be able to get any sort of future earnings off of the sale of Lilly Lashes given to the degree he brought it to? Or is this seeming like something the judge would say, oh, here's $10-15 million and Lilly Ghalichi has awarded her full company and that's like your bio?
Well,
What would it be? Because I know that there's other elements to this case which involve fraud, breach of contract,
right,
misrepresentation, and there's all different sort of other claims to this lawsuit.
Well, one of the claims is for specific performance. Typically in a breach of contract case, if one of the parties breached the contract, then the person who's suing gets the value of what the contract was worth.
At the time.
Yes, at the time. But there's another form of breach of contract where the person sues for specific performance. This usually arises in the sale of land, where the old lady is going to sell her home that's been in the family for 300 years. Nice young couple has given notice on their rental premises. They're ready to move in with the dog and the baby, and the old lady at the last minute has seller's remorse and says, no, I don't want to sell. The buyers can sue for specific performance, saying, you know what, it's not good enough for us to get some money for it. We valued this land, this home, this is what we were looking for. So we want the court to order that she sell the house to us, whether she wants to or not. So they've sued for that. The plaintiff has sued for that in this situation, which would be the 50%. His lawyers have done a smart thing, and they've sued for something called quantum meruit. It's a Latin term. Essentially means what the value of the thing. And so they're asking the court, if you don't give us this, then please give us that. And one of the things they're asking for is, if you don't believe that I'm entitled to 50%, you need to figure out what all my time, energy, and effort was to grow this business and give me a sum for the value of the services. This often happens in cases where people fire their lawyers. The lawyer's been working on a contingency on their personal injury case for 3 years. They fire the lawyer, hire someone, and then the person settles for $1 million. The lawyer did 3 years of work, gets nothing? No. They sue for quantum meruit. What the value of what I did. So they have sued. That's one of the claims in this lawsuit.
Right. This may be jumping the gun because I do have some other questions asked regarding this lawsuit. But how long would you think it would take to resolve a claim such as this? I know that they could settle outside of court before trial and that sort of thing. And also, if the plaintiff was awarded the $10-15 million, what if Ms. Ghalichi doesn't have $10 to $15 million in liquid cash? Would a lien go on her business? What would happen if she doesn't have that amount of money? And would she be able to appeal this sort of thing? Is that part of the process that this could just take years and years, where she can be in litigation for 10 years over this? So I'm just curious what your legal opinion is of that.
Well, that's sort of three questions.
Right.
The first one is easy to answer. In the Los Angeles Superior Court, on cases like this, the court has a goal that 90% of all cases filed of this type get resolved in a year. That it has to be brought to trial within a year. 95% or 98%, I don't remember, within 18 months, and 100% within 2 years. That's the goal. And the judges and the courts are rated on that, and there's some talk that there's funding issues that go into that, whether they meet those targets or not. That's the first part of your question. Second part of your question is, what if she doesn't have the money? Well, he says she does have the money. Then there becomes a collection process, Maybe if she doesn't have the money, that's impetus for him to argue to the judge that specific performance really is the only appropriate remedy, so he gets 50% of the company. On the appeal, that could take years. After a jury verdict, or if it's a non-jury trial, the judge's verdict, you essentially have 60 days to bring an appeal, and that could take a year, year and a half. I just finished an appeal that was quick. It from start to finish, it was about 9 months, but the plaintiffs had a very weak case, and so it only took 2 weeks from the oral argument until the decision.
Okay, so what kind of services does he claim are unique that he actually provided to Lilly Ghalichi and Lilly Lashes?
Yeah, I'm looking at this because I don't want to get this wrong. He argues that she had been in the business of selling these eyelashes.
Right.
And it was an inconsequential business. We already discussed the shade that was thrown there.
Right.
And when he took it over, he says that he developed a new business model where he identified a niche market that the lashes would actually be made of mink.
Versus the human.
Correct. And that this was his idea, sort of how it's phrased here. And then he designed the boxes for the mink eyelashes, which were instrumental in catapulting the sales because of the packaging.
How could that be measured? That was a direct result, right? How can you say that the box
Let me answer
or
that.
human versus mink, how is that?
Let me answer that in a second. Let me just finish this. And he also did a social media promotion on Instagram and so forth, which
And the deal with
was,
Kylie Jenner was a big post. Because
correct.
they run a lot of money through the Kylie Jenner Instagram post.
So that is some of the things that he says he brought that were unique. Now, the question is, how do you measure that? It's a good question. One, you would take the sales from the time period before and sales for the time period after. You would have maybe expert witness testimony on marketing as to how packaging can impact the sales. And that typically you'd expect if you have a new mink product that you're going to grow 8%, but because of this dynamic packaging, it actually grew 35%. And so there will be, to some degree, a battle of the experts, and there could be accountants that testify, forensic accountants that testify, and economists on the growth rate of how much he should be given today for money and what it's worth tomorrow, because you get a discount.
Mm-hmm.
Because $100 today, if you give me $100 today, might be $101 in
Right.
3 months. So there'll be a battle of the experts.
And that's going to be very expensive in order to have these expert witnesses and people that come up, and they're going to be billing hundreds of dollars per hour to work on their testimony, essentially, right? So this lawsuit will be a multi-million-dollar lawsuit in terms of the amount of energy and work and billing from the attorneys and everything.
Well, I
feel
don't know
like
if it's multi-million, but it'll be substantial.
So can you give any other specific examples on how he claims he's skyrocketed the business?
Yes. In paragraph 22, he says that because of his services and assistance, she was able to obtain a direct distribution line to the Middle East. And as a result, she became the #1 seller of false eyelash products globally. And before he was involved, she was generating $200,000 in gross revenue, but with his involvement, they were generating $15 million. So that's what he says in any event.
Okay, so given that you've kind of combed through the complaint, is there any other like juicy dirt or tea, if you will, in the complaint?
Yeah. Now, again, I've reviewed 7 pages of it. That's all that was available from Radar Online. But there's sort of a gratuitous description that in late 2014, early 2015, Ms. Ghalichi started having romance troubles with her then fiancé. And she went on Instagram and made a post about how this is her ex-boyfriend is a fame-seeking person, and if you have a lot of Instagram followers, beware, that sort of thing. So there was another business that is apparently was offered called Ghalichi Glam, and there was a claim of a discussion of 25% equity for that business, and there was going to be a school, a beauty school. So all this is involved in some of the drama that you would say is alleged in this complaint.
He was also alleging that she was taking prescription medication, or that she admitted that she was using during this time. Why do you think he brought this up in the claim, and is this a way to try to discredit her? And even if so, can't she be able to say, well, I might have entered into this agreement when I was under the influence of something, and therefore maybe he's not entitled to a 50% commission on, or a 50% equity in the business?
Well, let's identify paragraph 31. It says that he is informed and believes and thereon alleges. That's sort of a code word when you think something's true but you don't have any hard evidence. That's usually what those buzzwords mean. But that she was more interested in maintaining her celebrity public persona and celebrity lifestyle, and she was habitually under the influence of substances including Xanax and marijuana to the point where she was incapacitated, and even admitted to him that at one point she was a drug addict lunatic. Now, this is what he alleges. Right. So you bring up an interesting point. Number one, they are probably identifying this to telegraph that they are not pulling any punches in this lawsuit, and it's going to get ugly quickly. But you raise an interesting question. Could that backfire? Because she's going to claim you took advantage of me, you knew I was unable, incapacitated, I didn't have the capacity to make cogent decisions, and then that will require medical testimony. We just don't know. I'd be interested to see whether her answer to the complaint provides factual, specific allegations, because the answers to complaints usually don't. They just say, we deny what you're saying, you haven't identified enough facts to make a claim before the court, and this sort of boilerplate in the answer. The reason that there's specific allegations is probably, and I'm speculating, probably there's a claim for punitive damages. And so if he's asking for that, he's not just asking for X number of dollars, but he's also asking that she be punished, made an example of, for committing fraud, and so forth. So when you do that, you have to be real specific in the allegations that you have in your complaint, rather than just so-and-so breached the contract.
So what is the next development in the case?
Well, after she files her response, which she typically would have to do by May 27th of this year, the court is going to hold a case management conference in late October of this year. And at that point, Judge Cole will probably set a trial date, unless there's some reason that is given that she shouldn't. There's problems with document production, people aren't submitting themselves to depositions, that sort of thing.
And the final question that I have for you is, what is your favorite style of Lilly Lashes?
What you talking about?
Miami, Mykonos, like what is your favorite style of the Lilly Lashes?
Let me put it this way. I couldn't pick out Lilly, whatever her name is, Ghalichi, in a lineup of two. So I sure as hell can't pick out her eyelashes.
Oh, you can use code James for 10% off Lilly Lashes.
I'm thrilled.
Anyways, guys, I really hope you enjoyed this video and found it informative. If you like when I bring Jeff on to address different beauty drama from a legal perspective, let us know in the comment box down below. Also, if you have any other further questions for Jeff, we're going to be going through questions in the comments. So if you have anything that you'd like to add or ask or address, go down below in the comment section and leave us your thoughts. Also, make sure you click the subscribe button on this video, as well as that little bell icon. That's going to notify you when I make a new video, so you stay up to date on all the latest YouTube drama. Give this video a thumbs up, and I'll see you on my next video. Thanks so much for watching.